Let's hear you say that again, she said, fingers white on the back of the chair. The room fell into a hush that squeezed even the carpet silent. He glanced at the old watch at his wrist, then back to her with a stillness that made people lean closer as if to solve him by proximity. You already threw out my answer, he said, voice even. But you can't keep burying the evidence. The woman across from him didn't move. Her jaw pressed into her palm, waiting for the familiar to reassert itself, certainty, control, public validation. But in the hush after his words, no one spoke, not even the assistant with the trembling notepad. He set down the envelope. Her next breath caught, sharp. Everything you're hiding is already in this room, he said, and slid the envelope within inches of her. She did not reach for it. You think you can walk in here? She began, only to be cut off by his gaze, flat and unyielding, as if he'd already measured this moment and found it wanting. Her voice lagged, frayed at the edge. Who do you think you are? The question lingered unanswered. Stay with this story. It started 2 weeks earlier on a warm Thursday just before noon. A screwdriver fell, clattering metal on tile, as Jack Barrow levered himself out from under the humming belly of a basement boiler. It was almost noon, which meant lunch hour for tenants and a shift in the lobby's light, summer bright, hard and unfiltered through dusty glass. He scrubbed sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve, the blue of his coverall dark around the elbows, and checked the time on his father's battered watch. It ticked, steady as an accusation, though he knew it was late by 9 minutes and, lately, threatened to stop altogether unless he paid for the costly service he'd been putting off for months. He reloaded his tool pouch, distracted by arithmetic running in the back of his mind. School enrollment fees, overdue utility notices, the bit-by-bit vanishing of his savings after his wife's death 2 years ago. He'd learned to count his days by what needed fixing: the faucet leak in apartment 3B, the groaning elevator cables, the low whine from the rooftop generator. Most days he took comfort in the predictability. Today did not feel predictable. Lunch hour arrived with a chorus of elevator pings and tenant chatter. He ducked behind the supply cart, fishing out his sandwich, one made from discount cold cuts, rye bread just this side of stale. He unwrapped it carefully, meaning to eat standing, when the marble doors swept open and she appeared. Cassandra Reinhardt, real estate tycoon of the 7 buildings he maintained, plus an empire of high-rises that rose mile by mile along the city's shoreline. She wore confidence like a tailored suit, her stride decisive. Her assistant trailed 3 steps behind with a tablet and 2 phones. Cassandra's gaze snared on Jack and with no pause glided to his sandwich. The air thickened. "Is that lunch?" she said, voice pitched for the benefit of the staff clustered nearby. Jack set his sandwich down on the rim of the cleaning cart, hands steady. "Not much of a lunch," Cassandra went on, snapping her fingers at her assistant, who dutifully extended a manicured hand for Jack's meal. "We have image standards in the lobby. Get rid of this." Without waiting, the assistant seized Jack's sandwich, fingers brushing his own, and dropped it into the trash can with a thud that echoed along the marble. A wave of muffled laughter rippled from the front desk. Cassandra arched an eyebrow. "Next time, take your break somewhere that doesn't remind the tenants of how tight things are." He looked at her, the lines around his mouth barely shifting. "Ma'am, my lunch doesn't affect the building any more than the fixtures in the guest restroom," he said quietly. "But if you've got a maintenance request, you can email me." She barely regarded him, one hand flicking at her assistant as she strode to the elevators. "Just keep the place decent, all right? We're showing a new investor today. Try not to embarrass yourself." Jack slipped his hands into his pockets, resisting the itch to check the watch again. As the elevator doors slid shut behind her, he exhaled slowly, the laughter fading beneath the hiss of the air vent and his own silent calculations. He reached down and removed his lunch from the trash, brushing off a stray napkin before heading for the stairwell. He did not return to the lobby that day, not for a while. At the end of each Thursday, Jack's apartment was illuminated in soft gold, the light diffused by old curtains and the scattered drawings his daughter tacked to the fridge. He kicked off his boots at the door, pausing to trace a finger over the top of a small knitted rabbit perched on the bookshelf, Maya's favorite, and the one her mother had made the winter before deployment. "Dad," Maya called from the kitchen, clinging to her rabbit by one ear, "is it true that grown-ups eat alone so they can think better?" She stared up at him with frank curiosity, eyes too clear and wide for her question. Jack set down his tool pouch, the motion careful, deliberate, as though postponing his answer might make it less weighty. "No," he finally said, bending to her level, "that's not the reason." Maya pressed the rabbit to her cheek. "But you looked like you wanted to hide." Let the silence sit. Then, running a hand through his hair, Jack busied himself at the stove, the muscle memory of measuring rice and stirring beans more reliable than any words he might have found. The apartment's walls held reminders everywhere. A faded photo of his wife Jenna grinning in army fatigues, nearly hidden by refrigerator magnets, and the bottle of perfume still left half full on her dresser, scent faint but eternal. Her last note sat in a drawer, "Don't forget the shoes. Love you both." He placed dinner on the small table, seeing Maya's posture relax once she recognized the shape of her portion, the side dish always arranged in a smile. She tucked into her meal, making room near her plate for the rabbit. He left her a note in her lunchbox, the pattern familiar, 3 words, a smiley face, a promise to listen. She read it, mouth quirking, and asked, "How long do rabbits live, really?" He paused over the question, fork halfway to his mouth, and answered with an honesty scaled for 8-year-olds. "Longer than you'd think, especially when they're loved." Maya grinned. "His ears are magic." She squeezed them, the yarn puckering. The evening unwound quietly, Jack reading in his battered armchair, Maya humming as she packed her own backpack for school. Before bed, she returned the rabbit to its shelf, pausing to cross both arms around it, and almost as an afterthought, glanced at the desk drawer left slightly ajar. Jack caught her gaze, nodded once, and closed the drawer. At night, when the city hummed outside, he would sometimes lift the lid of his toolbox just to touch the dull silver of the coins and pins tucked into the corners, reminders of a life few here guessed at. Sitting by the window, he would wind his father's watch, feeling the tension in the old brass, counting every tick as a promise to stay present, to keep going. On the calendar by the window was a circled note. Enrollment closes Friday, 5 p.m. 4 days left. 2 hours later and 50 floors above, Cassandra Reinhardt dismissed her assistant with a flick. The penthouse windows glittered with the city's lights, her reflection broken by glass and dark sky. She sat behind a walnut desk polished enough to function as a mirror, reviewing an inbox that never seemed to empty. Her phone buzzed. "What now?" she snapped. An assistant's nervous voice answered, "The investor walkthrough is tomorrow, and someone from your father's foundation also requested a meeting, something about property records, should I confirm?" "Do it," she said, fingers tapping. "And order proper catering this time. I don't want any more complaints," she added coolly. She clicked through her father's old company files, folders half converted, profit margins in red. His portrait hovered in the lower right-hand corner of her monitor, stern unmoving, the only photo she kept. She hesitated, then opened a personal inbox, the most recent email subject reading, "Property transfer urgent. Unpaid liabilities remain." She stared at the message, jaw tightening, then marked it unread. In the kitchen, a single wineglass stood next to an untouched dinner. She ignored both, preferring the strict geometry of her planner. Her assistant reappeared in the doorway, tablet proffered. "The maintenance worker from Lake Street, should I terminate given the incident?" Cassandra paused. "Remind me which one." Jack Barrow, there've been minor tenant complaints. Loitering," someone said. The assistant did not meet her eye. A flash of something unreadable crossed Cassandra's face. "Give him 1 more week," she said sharply. "If anything else happens, he's gone." Her assistant nodded and withdrew, pen tapping nervously against the tablet. Cassandra let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding, fingers straying to the leather handle of her father's old briefcase, a permanent fixture now beside her desk. She glanced at the framed plaque above it. "Reinhardt Real Estate, Family First." She had not changed that motto, nor the way her father's office had always been arranged, desk facing north, windows on the right, 3 high-backed chairs for visitors she never wanted. She watched the city blink, dividing her attention between the horizon and an old lease contract she'd found among her father's papers, ink faded but still legible. Signed, Jack Barrow. The coincidence irritated her. She set the contract aside, fingers drumming just once. Decision made. Morning in the city meant deliveries and frantic coffee shop lines. In the building's underground garage, Jack busied himself with a maintenance request. The rooftop air handler had failed overnight, leaving tenants sweating and the building's investor walkthrough in jeopardy. He climbed ladders, tools jangling, while a specialist crew fumbled with the main compressor array. With 3 managers watching, the specialists pronounced the unit unfixable today and prepared to leave. A bead of sweat ran down Jack's temple. He studied the panel, eyes tracing lines of warning labels, one finger poised above a faded schematic. A junior staffer, April, hovered nearby, clearly apprehensive. "Mr. Barrow, are you sure about this?" she asked, voice low. Jack nodded, squinting at a corroded junction. "It's not the fan belt, it's the secondary relay, see here." He tapped precisely, then adjusted the wiring with a deftness that made April blink. "Someone overtorqued this last month, needs a manual reset, watch." The specialists watched, arms folded, as the air handler purred to life beneath Jack's touch. Air rushed cool and even down the spiral ducting. April's mouth parted in genuine astonishment. She took an uncertain step back, as if from someone she'd misjudged completely. "Lucky guess," one of the specialist techs muttered, unwilling to cede ground. April shot him a look. That wasn't luck, nobody else caught it. She regarded Jack, the lines in his face, the way he tucked a loose wire back into place with mechanical precision. Cassandra entered just as the hum of air conditioning settled over the floor. She took one look at Jack's stance, easy, confident, not awaiting validation, and dismissed the repair with a tight smile. "We got lucky, don't expect him to get it right every time. Anyone can replace a fuse." April bristled but held her tongue. Jack shrugged, gathering his tools, and offered a quiet reply. "You'll want to check the rooftop power feed before the investors arrive. There's been a drop-off every Thursday for weeks." April stared after him as he left, a series of questions in her expression she didn't voice yet. Papers shuffled, the elevator chimed. Cassandra left, already moving on to the next item in her agenda. But April lingered, replaying the short exchange in her mind, recalling something her uncle, an old army mechanic, once told her about men who fix what they don't announce. She had seen this before, 20 years ago. That night, April sat in front of her work tablet, a cup of vending machine coffee gone cold at her elbow. She keyed into the company's personnel records, searching for Barrow Jack. The system yielded little, minimal education, no reference date of hire 2 years prior. A second tab opened in private mode revealed an old modernization proposal from the building's original transfer, list of contractors, signatures, and a single note on file. Barrow family, no conflicts. Close recommendation, CPT, MD Shepherd USAF. She frowned, recognizing the reference, cross-checking against a secondary database. Jack's name came up again, this time alongside an old service commendation, redacted. The next screen locked her out, something about an expunged record pulled at her memory. April exhaled, adding possible veteran to her mental notes. She flagged the file for later. Elsewhere, Jack stood over the kitchen sink at home, sleeves shoved up, the evening news murmuring from the radio. Maya, knobby knees perched on a stool, stitched shut, one torn paw on her rabbit. "Why do you always look at your watch before you answer people?" she said, emphasis on always. He let the suds collect against his fingers before answering. "It helps me remember where I am." She swung her rabbit back and forth, then asked, "If someone is mean to you, do you have to forgive them, or can you just walk away?" Jack stopped scrubbing. The day's tensions pressed against his chest. He dried his hands carefully and sat beside her, looking not at her but at the rabbit, still bearing the tiny pink cross her mother had embroidered onto its hind leg. After more dishes and less talk, he tucked her in beneath a quilt patterned in constellations, told her twice that she was safe, and sat in silence long after the light clicked off. In the hours before dawn, an email arrived at Jack's inbox. Reminder, student enrollment closes Friday, 5 p.m., no late exceptions. The time raced in his chest, a bigger pressure than anything in 12 years of uniformed service. Early the next morning, the building's security officer, a wiry man named Edmund, approached April at the front desk. "You needed something from last year's personnel files?" he asked. "Looking for someone." April nodded, hesitating. "The maintenance guy, Jack Barrow. He fixed the impossible last night, knew what was wrong the way my uncle did." Edmund's eyebrows shot up. "He's not what he seems then," April shrugged. "Just a feeling." Edmund tapped his badge on the desk. "People like that, old habits die slow." The conversation shifted abruptly when 2 men from Cassandra's office arrived, rolling a dolly stacked with files. One, the taller, looked straight through April. "We're transferring all unfiled records off-site," he announced. "Orders from the top." April raised her chin. "I still need Barrow's file." "Too late," the man smirked. "But if you're curious, ask Reinhardt herself." Later that day, Maya returned from school, rabbit tucked under one arm, voice quiet. Dad, someone laughed at my lunch note again, said it was weird I still bring the rabbit. She did not look up from the floor. Jack crouched to her eye level, unsure if the sting he felt belonged more to her or to himself. Notes don't have to make sense to anybody else, he said softly. He straightened, set about preparing dinner, her words digging deeper than intended. Deadline loomed, less than 2 days left now. By Thursday afternoon, the building's courtyard buzzed with activity. 2 delivery trucks idled by the curb while Jack coordinated with a visiting airline engineer about a small charter jet scheduled to pick up an important investor later that evening. The jet, one of Cassandra's prized perks, was notorious for being temperamental. Its crew, imported from Dallas, moved briskly over the tarmac outside the private rooftop helipad. But when Jack came to check on a supposed coolant leak, he found a group gathered and a specialized engineer cursing softly at his schematics. It's no good, Stephen, this gauge won't read, the engineer complained to Cassandra, who stood nearby with arms folded. Get it fixed, she ordered, clipped. Our investor is boarding in 30 minutes. Seeing the escalating panic, Jack spoke quietly. I see the problem, he said, turning 3 heads at once. There's a hairline crack in the pressure manifold. That'll fail above 12,000 feet. You can patch it, but it'll burst. Everyone stared. Stephen, bristling, challenged him. And you're qualified, are you? Jack pointed to where 2 tiny streaks of coolant had dried, evidence invisible unless you looked just right. You're welcome to double-check. Happens in the 2011 model. Cross-check the flight logs from last month. April, present and watching, blinked. The engineer stepped closer, acknowledging Jack's expertise with a raised brow. Cassandra's mouth drew into a line. Without another word, Jack returned to the hidden bowels of the building, radio crackling. The pressure was building in more ways than one. That evening, April cornered Jack near the freight elevator. How did you know about the jet's manifold? She asked. Jack met her stare. I used to work around machines. Every machine breaks a different way. April's curiosity deepened. I found your record, she said, voice low. Why hide all that? Jack's reply was pared down to the shape of his own privacy. People act different when you give them a resume, he said. He folded the mention of his military service into a silence that spoke volumes, then departed, toolbox in hand. A new order arrived that night, higher priority than lunch. Cassandra's assistant called maintenance, citing conflict of interest and potential liability. April received a memo. Deliver Barrow's personnel file to Reinhardt. Immediate. She did so, but not before retaining a digital copy. In the pre-dawn lull, Cassandra paced her office, reviewing images from the day. Jack's calm presence, the way he refused to play her game, and her own mounting frustration over the property transfer. Her phone lit up again, this time a news alert. Regulatory probe into Reinhardt real estate following whistleblower complaint, FAA to inspect. That's not possible, she muttered, dialing her assistant. At the same time, Maya, at home, watched cartoons but didn't laugh. She hugged her rabbit tighter, as if the stitches could shield her from anything incoming. By midday, buzz swept the building. Rumor spread that Jack had called someone important, someone known to the very highest echelons of the city's infrastructure. He received a call himself, voice measured. This is Jack. Yes, you can come now. He hung up without smiling. April found him in the stairwell. You stirred something, she whispered. You should know they're looking at cutting your position, effective tomorrow. He nodded once, nostrils flaring, but not in anger. I didn't make this problem, but I won't run from it. Elsewhere, Maya sat in her classroom, teacher kneeling to ask, Did your dad forget to pack lunch today? Maya just shook her head, hands deep in the pocket where the rabbit waited. No lunch but a note, for brave girls always. Jack met Maya at the gate, her silence a sign that the cost of his choices risked making her collateral. He lifted her up and carried her home, feeling the minutes to 5 o'clock race by. He should not have made this her problem. Friday came heavy with expectation. Cassandra ordered her full board plus junior staff and legal assembled in the building's largest conference room. At 3, she clipped to her assistant. Invite the tenant committee, too. Word traveled. April received a last-minute mandatory attendance email. Jack, for his part, did not intend to attend until a knock at his door changed that. Edmund, the security officer, stood flanked by a woman with unmistakable Air Force bearing. "You're wanted on the 39th floor," she said. Her hair was pepper gray, her eyes sharper than her age. Jack did not object. He arrived in pressed coveralls, the lines in his face scrubbed clean by sleep, the old watch at his wrist less a talisman than armor. Maya, thanks to April's intervention, had a chaperone and a seat at the back of the room. The conference table's surface gleamed empty except for a thick envelope Jack had never seen before. Cassandra presided at the head, her posture imperial. "Thank you all for joining," she began. "Due to recent irregularities, we're conducting a review." Her gaze drilled holes into Jack without acknowledging him by name. "Transparency requires we address claims directly." Jack leaned against a pillar, neither defiant nor cowed. The gray-haired woman from Air Force Headquarters, Commander Shepard, now retired, cleared her throat. "Permit me to clarify," she announced, her voice cutting through the boardroom. "Mr. Barrow is present today because some of you have forgotten what due diligence looks like." Eyes shifted, Cassandra's hand gripped the chair. "Excuse me, who exactly authorized?" Commander Shepard set an envelope on the table. "This file is the property of the Department of the Air Force. Concerns regarding aircraft safety originated here." She gestured to Jack, her tone crisp. "He saved your client's life by identifying a flaw that could have killed 16 passengers." She paused. "You ignored his reports." The room went silent except for the hum of the projector. Jack's daughter's rabbit sat in Maya's lap like a silent observer. April from her seat met Cassandra's gaze. "Jack was right, the evidence is in the inspection logs and in your own files." An assistant at the end of the table swallowed, pen stilled mid-scribble. A junior attorney groped for his phone, trembling. Jack stepped forward, shoulders wide, hands loose. The old watch's face flashed in the harsh light. Cassandra's voice rose, brittle. "Let's hear you say that again." Her fingers whitened on the back of the chair. "You think you can walk in here and—" She gestured sharply at the file, unwilling to open it, unwilling to concede. "You already threw out my answer," he said, voice even. "But you can't keep burying the evidence." He slid the envelope forward, his movements measured. People watched, unmoving, the assistant with trembling notepad, April with chin high, Edmund at the door frowning. A board member tapped his pen, forgotten. "Everything you're hiding is already in this room," he said. She did not reach for the envelope. "Who do you think you are?" Cassandra's voice finally wavered, the edges unsteady. Jack didn't blink. He looked from her to Maya in the back row, then said simply, "I'm just someone trying to fix what others broke." The silence pulsed. Cassandra's chin dropped. "I never wanted this, my father's company, his debts, all of it. I kept it going because I had to. Do you have any idea what that's like?" It was April who said, not unkindly, "Maybe we all do, in our own way." Jack regarded Cassandra, his calm intact. "You made your choices, now the consequences have come." The color left Cassandra's face from the forehead down. Jack turned to Commander Shepard, who nodded, confirming what needed to be said aloud. "The FAA and SEC will continue their joint review. All files are now evidence. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear." A final hush settled. Cassandra looked around, her board, her staff, her future, waiting for someone to intervene. No one did. Her voice lagged as she whispered, "Who do you think you are?" Jack's answer, just the silent slide of the envelope, measure for measure. 6 months later, the city's skyline stood unchanged to anyone not searching for the cracks. In the building at Lake Street, new management supervised repairs with brisk, practiced hands. April, now in charge of facilities, greeted tenants by name, her modest office pinned with a photo of her uncle's old platoon. Edmund, the security officer, was rarely seen but always noticed, his respect for Jack wordless and weighty. Cassandra Reinhardt had stepped down quietly after the regulatory storm. News moved on. Her name became a footnote beneath the latest merger rumor. On a crisp school morning, Maya waited by the window, rabbit in tow, as her father slid a fresh lunch note into her backpack. "For brave girls, always loved." He fastened her jacket, ruffled her hair. "You know, Dad," she said, "it's okay if you're tired." He hesitated, but this time met her gaze. "I know, but I'm not alone." She grinned, rabbit's ears askew. You fixed it, though. Sometimes all it takes is showing up, he replied, kneeling for a quick hug, his old watch ticking perfectly now at his wrist. A breath later, the building exhaled into its routine. Above, the sun caught in the curve of a boardroom window, glinting off a pile of files long since sorted. And in the hush before the city's rhythm resumed, it was easy to imagine that every silence is not an absence but a promise, that the truth, when finally faced, remakes the quiet and offers us a place to stand. Later that afternoon, Jack loaded his tool pouch, humming under his breath as he knelt in the flower bed outside the main entrance. The new property manager, a woman with a quick, precise stride and a tendency to carry her own coffee, stopped beside him, shading her eyes against the sun. We're still getting thank you cards from tenants about you, she said. Jack blinked up, dirt on his knuckles, his smile a little shy. I just fix what I can. He picked a weed from the base of the azalea. She crouched down, studying the bush with a careful attention. You don't have to stay on as lead maintenance. You could consult. April says the city council is looking for someone with your background, technical and human, let's say. Jack hesitated, gaze flickering between the bush and the horizon. Maya, just settled. Stability means everything right now, but I appreciate the offer. She nodded, standing, no pressure, but the door's open. Her heels clicked away, replaced by the shuffle of little feet. Maya darted across the flagstones, backpack bouncing. Dad, April says I can show her my rabbit at the staff party. She showed him a pass, laminated, her name written in bold marker. He wiped his hands on his coverall. That's great, kiddo. Did you tell her about the magic ears? Maya giggled behind her hand, a conspiratorial sound. She promised not to pull them off, even said she'd guard the cookies. He grinned, the kind of grin that took a little earnestness to coax out these days. Then I'd say you picked the right friends. She looked up at him for a moment, sunlight catching in her dark hair. April doesn't talk down to me, even when I'm quiet. That's how you know someone's worth having around, Jack replied quietly. They listen to the part you don't say. Maya nodded, then offered him the rabbit. Keep him while I go inside, he's good luck if you're nervous. He took the little knitted toy, squeezing its soft body in his palm. Thanks, Maya, I'll look after him. She darted inside, door swinging closed behind her. Jack sat back on his heels, the garden silent except for the whine of a distant siren and the flutter of leaves. He traced the little pink cross on the rabbit's leg, memory prickling beneath his skin. A shadow loomed, the sound of careful, hesitant shoes. April stopped beside him, her clipboard tucked under one arm. Edmund says the surveillance system is due for its first software check since before. Her voice softened. You up for teaching us how you kept the old ones running? I can promise coffee and at least one unflattering story about building politics. Jack's reply was dry. Only if you let me keep the manual this time. April made a face. Deal, but you have to tell Maya the story about the elevator keys. She keeps asking why there's a button hidden behind the inspection panel. Jack's laugh was surprised. Okay, but only if she agrees to never try it herself. April beamed, her demeanor shifting from manager to ally. She hesitated, then added, I'm glad you stayed, Jack. He nodded, tucking the rabbit into his pocket. Me too, April. Inside, the staff party was already underway. Laughter echoed against polished floors, and a long table groaned beneath platters of food better than anything from last summer's investor luncheon. Maya, small and proud, spun in a circle, the rabbit lifted high above her head. At the cardiac center downtown, Cassandra Reinhardt waited in a low-lit room, her suit replaced by loose hospital-issue grays. The view through the window was smaller now, boxed in by recovery schedules and a single orchid sent by her father's oldest friend. Her phone chirped occasionally, but she ignored it. This afternoon, she allowed herself to read the news, the old headlines, the case updates. Her lawyer said the worst was over. Her company was, in many ways, safer now than ever, debts wound down, regulatory scrutiny passed, structure simplified. Her name would no longer top the masthead. She turned to a written note by her bedside, scrawled in blocky handwriting. From Maya Barrow, brave is not the same as loud. Beneath it, a taped ribbon and a tiny fabric ear, blue yarn snipped and tied. Cassandra smiled, small but honest, and picked up her phone. She composed a message to Jack. Tell Maya thank you, I'm learning the quiet too. She erased it, then tried again. From Cassandra, when you can, there's a letter for you in the manager's office. I wish things had gone differently. Take care of the building, it was always meant for families. She pressed send, let her head sink back against the pillow, and finally slept in peace. Back at Lake Street, April watched the sun dip behind the adjacent tower. Edmund lingered at the door, sweeping the last of confetti from the lobby. You see the way people look at Jack? He asked quietly, voice pitched for April's ear alone. She took a last bite from her apple, nodded. They see someone who doesn't give up. Edmund tucked the dustpan away. After what this place has been through, that means more than most realize. April looked past Edmund, watching Jack, sleeves rolled, helping Maya pin her drawing to the employee board. The girl's rabbit perched atop his toolbox, guardian of secrets and lunch notes alike. She felt pride that wasn't quite hers, but close enough to keep. Jack caught her eye. Later, as dusk pulled a blue shadow across the lobby, Jack and Maya walked home. The street echoed with the faintest scent of lilacs, the promise of summer. Maya kept hold of his hand, her rabbit riding in the crook of her elbow. Dad, will you always work here? Jack thought about repairs left to make, about the city's rhythm pulsing under every crack in the sidewalk. He glanced down at her. Maybe not forever, but as long as I'm needed. She studied him, then looked ahead. When I'm bigger, I'll help you fix things. He nudged her with his elbow. I believe you. She smiled, easy, trusting, and that was enough. That night, Jack sat on the fire escape, legs stretched over the iron slats. The city glowed, windows lit like signal lanterns. He turned the letter Cassandra had mentioned over in his hands. The envelope bore nothing but his name. He broke the seal. Inside, 3 pages penned in careful, slanted script. Jack, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know I was afraid. Not of losing the company alone, but of failing where my father left so many cracks to fill. I saw you as a threat because you reminded me of what he expected from me and what I could never be. I never knew how you kept going. Thank you for making sure nobody else paid for what I didn't fix. The building is better for having you and your daughter in it. If you ever want a recommendation or a favor, you know where I am. Cassandra. He folded the letter, setting it atop Maya's drawing of their building, her crayon lines running strong and certain up the paper's edge. He tugged at the rabbit's ear, the pink cross fading but the talisman still warm. Maya appeared at the window, face framed in lamp glow. Dad, what are you doing? Just finishing something, he called softly. She leaned out. Can you fix the loose board under my bed tomorrow? He grinned. That I can promise. Inside, Maya slipped beneath her quilt, the city's hush drifting in through half-open window. Jack tucked the letter and the rabbit safely in the top drawer of his desk, winding his father's watch one last time before bed. The ticking had steadied, confident, not because it had been repaired, but because someone had cared to keep it wound. And so, life tilted forward. The seasons shifted. Maya grew taller. Jack eased his hold on work when he could, coaching April's new apprentice, walking Maya to school, helping neighbors with more than just repairs when they asked, always with that same measured patience, that refusal to announce what he had fixed. In the building's heart, truth became a kind of daylight, sometimes soft, sometimes harsh, but always honest. A year from that thunderous boardroom day, on a Sunday bright with birdsong, Maya gathered with friends under the budding trees in the courtyard. Lunch notes tucked in backpacks, rabbits with magic ears scattered like good luck charms around the play area. The laughter rang out, real and unforced. April snapped a photo, a memory she'd later pin on her office wall next to her uncle's platoon. One of the parents nudged Jack. You ever think about running for the tenant board or, hell, city council? Jack sipped his coffee, amused. Only if you guarantee Maya gets the top floor for her rabbit garden. The parent grinned. It's a deal. Later, as dusk fell and the building's lights blinked on one by one, Jack held Maya's hand on the way home. The rabbit's ears trailed along her jacket. Do you remember what you told me about fixing things? She asked. He nodded, matching her pace, that you start with what's in front of you and you listen. She squeezed his hand. I won't forget. Jack looked up, street lamps painting gold across the sidewalk. the promise of tomorrow simple and intact. In the hush that settled over their small apartment, Jack knew that some things once made right stay right, not because the world fixes itself, but because there are always hands willing to hold the quiet and hearts brave enough to answer the silence.